सबसे अलग है, सबसे जुदा। सुनो एक नई आवाज, बातें नई है, नया अंदाज। सुनो एक नई आवाज, दिल से है आपके साथ। नया है ये पेशकदम।
You have tuned into Radio Peshkadam. I am your host for today's episode, Huma Masroor. In this episode, we will be joined by a very special personality, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Islamic University of Science and Technology, Professor Shakil Ahmed Ramshu, who will at length talk about the remarkable G20 event happening this year in India. India has assumed first ever leadership of G20, wherein 20 big world order players meet under one banner to analyze, discuss, and shape up key strategies, serving as a roadmap for future. Even though the flagship marathon usually revolves around global economic goals, but over a period of time, the impetus has been widened to certain other pressing and contemporary issues touching life existence and security. In tune with India's rich values and history, the theme of this year-long presidency has been set to Vasudevaya Kutumbakam, which translates to one family, one earth, one future. This way, the G20 events spread across various cities are seeking to lay special focus on inclusivity, stability, and oneness to bring out the holistic and promising outcomes for future. As the high-profile events pick up pace with top functionaries of 19 countries and the European Union leading the way under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the hopes and aspirations run high as Jammu and Kashmir finds its place in one of key events coming home later in May. To talk about the significance and possible outcomes of India's remarkable presidency of G20 and its takeaway for Jammu and Kashmir in specific, we have with us our reporter Kaleem Gilani, who will be interviewing the Vice Chancellor of Islamic University of Science and Technology, Professor Shakil Ahmed Ramshu, who undoubtedly has earned an international recognition for his stellar contribution to earth sciences and continues to be the vocal champion for climate change, which is obviously among the major flashpoints of this G20.
Thank you, Huma. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Let's begin with the questions. The G20 draws a long history of addressing crucial issues concerning the stability and security of mankind and their surroundings, from dealing with the economic problems at large to narrowing it down to other alarming issues. The countries so far have discussed and evaluated it all. What do you think? How important is G20 and the goals it entails this year?
G20 is a very important forum at the global level. Since its formation in 1999, 19 countries plus the European Union and then some other world bodies are part of the G20. And it represents a large population of the world, almost two-thirds population of the world. So these countries control almost 80 to 85% of the world GDP. Now with that amount of clout that these countries yield, issues that the world faces are also on the agenda of this G20. The good thing about the G20 is that it rotates among the countries. This year G20 is being held in India. So it provides an opportunity to all the countries to be part of this agenda, to be part of this solution in addressing some of these global problems that we have. Now, if you look at the G20 agenda this year, almost 20 important concerns, 20 important themes have been identified to be addressed with the collective wisdom of the people of these 20 countries. Every country, every human being, every sector of economic activity, every, I will say, aspect of human life is affected by the climate change. Now the world, realized that concerns, the consequences of non-action on some of these concerns. And that's how the Paris Agreement in 2015 came into effect. If you look at this year's agenda, Sustainable Development Goals, I mean, again, the world has put before them a very challenging targets to meet these 17 Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. That is a big challenge for the world. Can we meet it? G20 has a very important role, whether it is Sustainable Development Goal, whether it is climate change mitigation, or whether it is the financial security and other aspects, other issues at the global level. So G20 has a very, very important role.
So, coming to Jammu and Kashmir, like you know, Srinagar finds its place in many high celebrated events such as U20 and Tourism Working Group meeting, which are among the key highlights. What could it mean for the Himalayan region, and what are the possible expectations from the high profile events?
You see, in India, there are so many scores of programs, meetings, discussions, workshops planned all over the country. And Y20 is also being held at Kashmir. Y20 is basically Youth 20. We are also becoming part of that. All the universities are part of the organization of the Y20 in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, what do we do in these workshops, in meetings, in these panel discussions? It is not only the people from the universities of Jammu and Kashmir, the people from all over the country, and also people from other countries come and join the deliberations, proceedings of these meetings. And we look at these global concerns. I mean, what is the status? How we can have better policies to address some of these concerns. So this collective wisdom of the people of this place, the country, and the entire globe, the members of the G20 that come here and will look at the stats and basically develop a strategy in order to better address these. So it is a great opportunity for us. At the global level, we are not responsible for the climate change, but unfortunately, we face the maximum brunt of the climate change. So it is very important for us to express very loudly, very clearly our concerns that we are not responsible for the climate change, but we are facing the maximum brunt, because if you see, there is no industry in Jammu and Kashmir. So we are not emitting the greenhouse gases that are responsible for the rising temperatures, the global warming. And we have the most important resource in Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, that is the glaciers. 18,000 glaciers we have in Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh. And they basically provide water to about 400 million people. And now this is the only resource that we have. I would say the most important resource that the people of Jammu and Kashmir have. And the livelihood of the people of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh is linked to the sustainability of these glaciers. Now they are melting under the climate change. So it is important for us, for the country, for the people of Jammu and Kashmir to speak about these issues and basically raise awareness at the global level that the people living in the Himalayas, not only Jammu and Kashmir, the entire Himalayas and the mountainous regions, they contribute to global warming very least, almost negligible, but they face the maximum brunt of the climate change. So there is a need for evolving a strategy where we will be compensated for it. We need to be local in the meeting so that we get justice. The climate justice is very important aspect of the negotiations that is being talked about.
Since you have been researching extensively on various pressing issues impacting life or having the potential to impact in future, what according to you are the various worrying and crucial trends demanding immediate attention in line with G20?
As I said, that we have set 2030 as the target for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And having an eye on these 17 Sustainable Development, we are nowhere to be there. Not in 2013, probably not even in 2040 also. One of the sustainable goals is basically we have to minimize the climate change and we have to take an action on that. The energy, renewable energies, these are some of these issues, that will still take us another 15, 20 years if we really follow the commitments, the targets that we have set for ourselves before the international community. Whether it is the Paris Agreement or whether it is the Kyoto Protocol or any other internationally binding agreement that the countries have entered into it. Because it is a very complex issue. Now these, sustainable development goals, whether it is basically having an equitable economic development, there's a large disparity within the countries, between the countries. Can we really achieve it in next 6 years or 7 years? In some of these sustainable development goals, we have made a good progress, like provision for a safe drinking water. But having said that, so again I would say that this is an opportunity for the people of this country, people at the global level, because we will be talking about the sustainable development. At the IUST, Islamic University of Science and Technology, we are going to have a national brainstorming only about the sustainable development goals under G20. In the month of June, we'll have that. In the month of May, we have Y20 summit that is being held at the Srinagar. University of Kashmir is organizing that. Climate change is one of the priority areas. The disaster management is another priority areas, because globally, particularly the mountainous communities, are highly susceptible, vulnerable to the disasters. So what needs to be done? What strategies, what policies, what action plans need to be put in place? So this all will be deliberated there. I think it's a great opportunity, great forum. If you look at the activities that are planned up to the summit in the country, so every day there is some brainstorming happening on some of these issues. You can't, in one meeting, you can't deal with all the 17 sustainable development goals or all the problems that we face, climate change and other issues. You have a lot of other issues, gender inequality, the economic inequality. You have a lot of marginalized segments of the society, how to basically bridge that divide and gap. This opportunity for us to pool our intellectual resources to find the solutions to these problems.
So you talked about bridging the gap. Do you think in events like G20, do we need to keep people on board, like marginalized communities or the people who have been affected by the climate change with most or some other pressing issues?
They are already part of this process. If you look at the activities that are planned, the G20 India website, and you will see scores of activities, workshops, meetings, planned till the summit. And many of these, as I said, when there are discussions about marginalized communities, in India, we call them SC, STs, and other communities. So NGOs are part of that. These community leaders are part of those deliberations. When I will be attending the meetings as an expert on climate change, there will be some people who are sociologists, who are community experts, who have an expertise on that. They are the people who are talking on these issues, because this is a global challenge, that the disparity between the gender. How can you have a good human development if you ignore 50% of your population? Look at any aspect of human life. Go to any businesses, go to an industry, you will find a big disparity. So these are the issues that are being discussed at the G20 level and also in other world forums.
You laid a special focus on sustainable development goals. But where does the hunger go? Fueled by inflation, COVID-19 and climate change, the number of people globally affected by hunger went up to 8 to 8 million in 2021, which is an increase of about 46 million since 2020. In the backdrop of this, what does the ongoing G20 hold for the fulfillment of SDG goals, and what can be the possible solutions given the way things are transpiring on ground?
Definitely, this gap needs to be closed as early as possible. And the good thing about it is that people are talking about it. I mean, the countries, the nation states. Good thing about G20 is that the summit will be attended by the heads of the states. So when the discussions and agreements happen at these meetings, the workshops, the proceedings that are happening, so ultimately all these recommendations will go to the summit. So this pooling of the intellectual resources, I mean, we discuss something here. It is not only the people in Jammu Kashmir, the entire country, and then the members from all these 20 countries, they are part of the deliberations. These recommendations go to the heads of the states, and they, what has happened between the last and this year's summit and what needs to be done. So I think this is very good that these things are being discussed.
Given a renewed focus on green energy, which also got a major share in this year's budget, the IUST on its part has also a full-fledged solar network, and as you know, launched a major G20 campaign recently. What else is there in the store? Any other endeavors towards fulfilling the India's transition to net zero emissions by 2070?
The energy security is very important, concern at the global level. And because it is linked to many things. It is linked to the hunger, how you basically improve the economics or the financial stability of a country. It is linked to the climate change. I mean, if you are using coal as a source of energy, so you are emitting large amount of the greenhouse gases. Now the renewable energy or basically the transformation from non-renewable to renewable energy is basically a mechanism where we can really address many of the global problems. You will see that a lot of investment is going into it. A lot of research is being done India has committed that we'll be carbon neutral by 2070. What does that mean? That means that by 2070, our all the energy, I mean, as of now, we have about 75% of our energy comes from coal. Coal is a very, we call it a very dirty source of energy because there's large amount of greenhouse gases that lead to the climate change and pollution and other aspects. Now, our Prime Minister has made a very bold commitment before the international community that we will be carbon neutral by 2070. So anymore, after 2070, we will not be using the coal as a source of energy. And we have said that by 2030, we will be, reducing this by 30% and all that. So a lot of emphasis on the renewable energy. Now, what does that mean? That means we are getting into an era of photovoltaics, solar power generation. We are getting into an era of electric vehicles. Now we have set for ourselves, I mean at national level, a target that by 2030 is 6 years from now, all our two-wheelers and three-wheelers will be electric vehicles. By 2030, 30% of our private cars will be electric vehicles because we want to reduce the emissions from the fossil fuel. I mean, the gasoline, the diesel, petrol. So this is an era where I think there will be a lot of investment, there will be a lot of jobs, and the IUST is very much aware of that. As you know that about 60% of our energy is coming from the solar energy. We have a plan to establish a solar park of 10 megawatts that will help us to meet 100% of our energy requirement. Additionally, we will be able to supply this renewable energy to the communities here, to the aims that is coming up in our vicinity. As I said, few decades will be an era of photovoltaics and electric vehicles. So we are starting the skill courses in these, branches, in these areas, so that the requirement for the trained, skilled manpower is met. So we are very conscious about this, and I hope we'll be able to contribute to providing the energy security at the national level.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable insights.
Thank you, Kaleem, for this wonderful interview, which highlighted the key points of G20 under India's presidency. We hope our listeners would have enjoyed this episode of Radio Peshkadam. Signing off, this is your host, Huma Masroor.
सबसे अलग है सबसे जुदा सुनो एक नई आवाज बातें नई है नया अंदाज सुनो एक नई आवाज आपके साथ नया है ये पेशकदम।